is going.
Good morning, everyone. It's the
morning.
3rd of December, 2025. Good morning, everyone, wherever you are. Please let us know in the chat where you're watching from.
Oh, here she is.
And
Good
hashtag
morning.
KMT
For
or
Kiltz My Tribe. No, a Kiltz Mosquitoes Carnivore book.
a book. Okay. And if you have any questions, put them in the chat, please. And how are you doing today, Dr. Kiltz? Ready for that talk at the
What am I
Batch
talking
Club?
about?
No.
A lot of stuff going on today.
And we have a guest.
And we have a guest today. Who do we have?
How are you doing today?
I'm here. Hi, team. Thank you so much for allowing me in today.
Sure.
Yeah.
Thank you for being here. We really appreciate you.
Yeah, it's really a privilege, I think, to learn, for me as a physician scientist, to learn from our audience, because they're the population we ultimately want to serve. And we learn so much case-by-case knowledge and just, I would say, practice, pearls and tips from their lived experience. So it's always delightful to talk with our audience.
Where do you live?
So I'm here, actually, it's pretty dark outside. My background is truly my living environment. I live very close to Yale School of Medicine and our hospital, Yale New Haven Hospital. As a resident, we go, Dr. Kiltz knows, as a resident, you go through this grueling training process, right?
The training grounds of life.
Yeah.
How do you pronounce your first and last name for those listening?
Sure. Yeah, my first name is Hui. It's actually I came from a country of origin, China. My mom, she grew up in a Japanese household, so she ran a Japanese household herself. I would describe my culture, including diet culture background, is a blend of Japanese and Chinese.
Ooh.
And yeah, so came here at the age of 18. I clearly still remember 2 suitcases, $400 in my pocket. And I did undergrad, I did post-bachelor research, and the MD PhD combined dual degree training. Now I'm in the research track residency program at Yale.
In what particular field?
In the field of psychiatry and neuroscience research training program. Yeah.
And what brought you into this keto carnivore world?
Yeah, so for me, my PhD work, I would describe my prior research was gave me a solid foundation in molecular genetics and DNA topology, very basic science, the type of science, Cold Spring Harbor lab would do. And then for my PhD, I actually went into systems and molecular neuroscience. Specifically, I study the neural control of acute hunger, satiety, and long-term energy homeostasis and body weight change. If you look at the pedigree of my PI, we came from the progeny of scientists who discovered leptin at the Rockefeller University.
Wow.
Yeah, so we have a tradition of being interested in both the central and the peripheral hormonal control of weight and weight-related health problems. Now coming to Yale, I actually joined a lab that is very prominent in the field of immunology. My PI here is a person who discovered the innate immune system in broadly in mammals, essentially. Anyone know about the textbook? He and his PI, meaning his mentor, wrote the textbook we use and are still using in educating medical students in immunology, allergy and immunology. So we are at the interplay between neuroimmune, hormonal health, I would say more specifically, the racial profile of immune active molecules that we derive from nutrients, to how does that affect hunger drive? And on both ends of the eating spectrum, meaning on one end, dysregulated eating spectrum. One end, you have anorexia or restrictive type of eating. On the other end, I guess most of the American population would be struggling with is the over-consumatory drive leading to, say, binge eating, more kind of destructively bulimic behavior. So, yeah, that's...
Why did we make overeating pathologic? Is it possibly physiologic and instinctual because the human being evolved in a world of lack of food?
Yeah, that's a really good point. I would say in mice, overeating is actually not pathological. Believe it or not, mouse or most rodents do not have a gag reflex. This is actually the reason why when Ozempic first came into the market, it caused so much nausea, vomiting, gastroparesis, because the preclinical work was done in mice, and mice and rats do not have a gag reflex. So they would, if you do experiment in them, they would literally eat to the point where their belly is touching whatever a platform or the floor they reside on, and they cannot vomit. So human, theoretically, we do have a gag reflex. So theoretically, you would vomit if you eat a exceedingly large amount. But typically, we would stop because the gastric distension, the discomfort or the aversive signal that goes into your brain due to gastric distension would stop you before the gag reflex kicks in. The problem with us is that even if before the point where your gastric distension would stop you from eating, you are already over consuming calories, leading to obesity, metabolic problems. So that's to answer your questions in a succinct format. I would say overeating to the extreme would be pathological because we have a mechanism defending against it. The problem is that with a dysregulated signaling molecule profile, it becomes harder to eat to homeostatic satiety. I describe it that way.
I'm sort of looking at anthropological, sociological evolution of humans. We live in a world of abundance where historically we did not. I mean, if we could go back 20,000, 50,000 years ago, we didn't have the same food environment. So we're studying our human habits in a dietary environment of not historically natural or normal diets for humanity.
Yeah, I think that's very much true. That's why over-consumatory drive is a bigger problem than anorexic tendency. If you think about how anorexia evolved in human history, right? Why anorexia would ever make sense? It's actually, if you're in extreme resource limited environment, having a subset of your population to be able to survive in extreme hunger, to endure extreme hunger, and then they may be able to or may not be able to refeed themselves out of this anorexic state once the resource become more abundant. Actually, for the population, it evolutionarily makes sense. That's why also human is very rare in a sense that the female population of human live many years beyond menopause. If you think about it from a reproductive resource allocation, it's a wasteful resource. You would want your females of a species, maybe I'm saying entirely from a evolution standpoint, if they have reached their reproductive endpoint, then why don't they just gradually, quickly fade away to make room for more reproductively active female? The reason we live way beyond menopause age was also to rear the next generation. Yeah, for a pup rearing in mice, if you would say.
Right. So what's your thoughts on the keto and carnivore movements? Because it's not mainstream in medical science and medical practice. How are you finding that crossroads?
One of the reasons I want to instill some hope in our audience is that probably you don't hear, like prominent physicians from your typical East or West Coast elite institute coming out to kind of openly endorse it. But I want to instill the hope that actually many prominent scientists and physicians, they are not averse by it. They're very, at least even in the people I interact with daily, they're very open-minded about it. They even try it themselves. They try fasting. They try ketogenic diet. I actually personally knew, so my PI here at Yale, he himself has tried fasting, has tried the ketogenic diet. He's profoundly interested in lipolysis during ketosis. And also, his lab, I just met him yesterday as an interim kind of research progress one-on-one meeting. We were discussing a lab's prior finding that ketones are actually required for the heightened locomotion during ketosis. So during ketosis, a lot of people feel actually a jolt in their exercise energy. Actually, if you knock out the receptor for ketones, you would dampen that effect. So that's
someone from Instagram says, for me, I feel like a rebel. Is this way of thinking, eating, living a little rebellious, but just like the revolution of 1776 eventually became the norm? And what are your thoughts on that?
I do. I myself eat a carnivore diet for many years. And I don't push it. Say in my clinic, I don't push it to my patients. I don't say, oh, I myself benefit so much from it, thus you must give it a try. I would offer it as something to consider, and to consider to the extent that their lifestyle, their reality would permit. I don't want it to be aversive or prohibitive for them to even give it a try. To piggyback on scientists being open-minded about it, I personally also know Nobel Prize laureate who fast and who he himself is actually an avid fisherman. He would go like near sea fishing for catch salmon. He would cook it right on his boat with his lab members, and he enjoyed a great meal of just salmon. So I think it's delightful to know. And even in elite institute, say, for example, in the state psychiatric hospital in Maryland, Their director have had success, both publication and grant success, with giving people who suffer from severe mental health illness ketogenic diet. Go ahead.
What motivated you to do a carnivore diet?
Yeah, so I myself, during my PhD, I went through a period of quite a challenging period, and I was abusing exercise as the only way of, I would describe it as anxiolytic way to kind of release anxiety. And I did not have any like body image or thin aspiration related eating disorder psychopathology, but because of the overexercising or using exercise as the only way to stress release, I did rapidly lose a lot of weight. And I personally felt no matter how you get yourself into an energy deficit, I would imagine into an energy surplus as well on the other end of the spectrum, you can self-regulate out to the point where your neural circuit is responding in a way that's not appropriately adaptive. So I actually went for inpatient nutritional rehabilitation because it was no longer safe for me to feed myself outside of the hospital at home. Dr. Kiltz probably know extreme like people, refugees coming from literally far famine regions, you can go into what we call refeeding syndrome if you start to eat. So I went inpatient, and coming out, I was trying to find a way to sustainably refeed to maintain a good nutritional status myself. And I did explore, and I found to be able to, initially it was almost silly. I ate bone marrow, like literally just baked, like marrow bones baked in the oven. I ate abundant New York strips, and that sustained. Yeah, I love steaks. Or is that a short rib?
This is a short rib that I just threw on the barbecue this morning. And,
that's
and the beauty, I want to just kind of show everyone. So this is how I cook it.
I love short ribs too. Yeah.
And simply black and blue with salt on it, and so simple, and it lasts all day if you want. I typically I'm not eating. I just had one little bite and that was it. And I'll save it for tomorrow. It is so amazing, satiating. It's interesting because I went into medicine, and I'm sure you did, your curiosity of the human body, physiology, biochemistry, and helping our brothers and sisters heal. And I'm very fascinated by this particular topic.
Most delicious points, yeah.
Poisons. What poisons come from this?
Yeah, I see. The information you're trying to convey to our audience. It's really, and also, in my current research, I study the omega-6 and omega-3 ratio and how the ratio is implicated in the regulating of hunger drive. I was just showing my PI and my research residency program director the most recent results. We see a high omega-6, low omega-3 in the overconsummatory drive population, or the opposite, or in people who do not have anorexia, or let me put it this way. I wouldn't say that a high 6, low 3 ratio definitely would cause you to overconsume, but we know a high 3, low 6 ratio is very prominent in anorexia, and even in recovered anorexia, meaning that those people are weight restored. Their body weight-wise, they look like healthy people, but they sustain this immune active signaling molecule profile. And it's not the sheer amount that matters, it's the ratio. Then the question boils down to, for humans, naturalistically, how would you get the optimum ratio, or how would you get the species appropriate ratio? And we know that if you want to kind of most people's problem are over-consumatory drive, I would imagine, among our audience. They want to, they don't want to be stressed out every single day about overeating. They want to eat to their satiety, maintain a reasonable body weight. Yet you could argue you can try to forage plant or seed-based diet, just try to get the ratio right. But even for rodents who are largely eating meat, I mean, they are omnivores, but they have to eat we formulate the diet with very specific seeds for it to be a omega-3 deficient or omega-6 deficient diet. For humans, it'll be so difficult if you eat a predominantly plants or seed-based diet.
So is when we look at our species-specific or evolutionary diet, as modern civilization created agriculture and farming and slavery and soldiers and peasantry and prisoners, and ultimately our problem still boils down to a propagandized plant-based position is our biggest problem, because when we say omega-3, omega-6s, we could say animal versus plants. In essence?
Yeah, that's very fair, especially for mammals or for humans. You could try to forage omega-3 from plant or seed-derived things, but then you'll have to be so choosy and so likely over-consuming total calorie to get enough of it or to get the ratio optimum. And also, now there's an emerging field which cross paths with Dr. Kiltz, your specialty, reproductive psychiatry. Yeah. So how do females feel? I think it should be kind of the topic should be broadened to males as well, because they also go through mood oscillation as their age, their testosterone level change, right? And for females, it's just a bit more prominent in terms of going through puberty, going through pregnancy, and folks I could say that especially in females who are not in an entirely supportive environment, sometimes when they make dietary changes, their mood become a little elevated, which is normal. For example, if you kind of therapeutically give people exogenously give people who have low estrogen patch, they can feel a bit kind of bump up in their psychomotor drive. And sometimes it scares themselves and it scares whoever lives with them. They feel this person is become like hypomanic or manic, a little bit elevated, what we call in psychiatry. And sometimes in people who are not in a supportive environment, their partners or whoever around them doesn't like that or do not get used to it. They think, but this is not abnormal. This is probably because that person had always been in a more subdued mood, maybe because their diet are not optimum. Their mood is chronically low. That happens with males too, especially as their testosterone levels start to kind of trickle down as they age.
So our reproductive dysfunction is probably related to our plant-based low animal fat diet, which then shoves a bunch of food to us, kind of like under the door, because we're in little boxes which were then hoarding boxes of food, which aren't natural or normal to a hunting animal.
Yeah.
And hunting not only for food, but for mating. And I'm always interested in bear mating and hibernation, because bears become hyperphagic and in an attempt to get fat, but then they don't live together, the male and the female, but they come together during mating times for a couple of weeks, and then they go their separate ways.
Yeah. To put it down in a more practical sense, I myself eat quite a high-fat diet. Within a carnivore, I definitely eat a high-fat. Especially in females, I do feel kind of near rapid starvation type of carnivore. To me, at least my personal experience, is not optimum, and I would not like advise whoever come to me just for peer advice to eat that way. And also from our research study, we know that for those to derive those immune active molecules from your diet, our brain knows the same region that gets activated by Ozempic are responsible for encoding a need state or a deficiency versus surplus state for omega-6 and 3. But somehow rodents or mammals do not behaviorally forage it. And then the framework we're thinking under right now is that naturalistically, our diet give us enough of them. That's why when I put mouse in an absolute deficient for one diet, we have not evolved the neural circuit to see I'm going to overeat calorie to forage for it. So what happens? You end up sustaining a deficit, but your brain knows. The reason that we think it encodes that information is because essentially extreme high omega-3, low omega-6 would mimic someone who is in a anorexia physiology or who's taking Ozempic. Could be. This is still in the postulating stage. We have to conduct more experiments to show it. As you can imagine, the opposite could be correlating with a hyperphagic drive. So the brain encodes that information not to guide you to appropriately forage for that specific thing, because your natural diet comes with enough of it. So enough not meaning health-wise optimum. Enough only means that you don't go into like a medical condition such as developing a neurological deficit, like not being able to walk, ataxia, Dr.Kiltz, if we know the medical term. Or say, for example, in my mind, say if I deprive them towards their late adulthood, they would develop dermatitis. So you get enough of it so that you don't derive those kind of legitimate medical compromise or condition, but your hunger drive is not optimized.
We have a couple of questions here.
Mm-hmm.
Sure. TS 31966, where would an ideal ketone level be?
Yeah, I would, there's a, I don't know whether this is a scientific way of saying so. I would say if you're fast, first, I do not advocate for someone taking endogenous, drinking a lot of MCT oil, try to induce ketosis. I do not think that's the most physiological ketosis, because usually ketosis come also with a global energy deficit. If you're in a high ketone state, but you're not in an energy deficit, I'm not saying it's a bad thing. I just don't think a lot of the metabolic benefits would equate if you're in a natural ketosis that are a sequela of energy, being in a mild energy deficit. I would also not measure, but I would say if you're extremely if your anxiety become not mitigatable even by with mild exercise, that's probably not well adapted. You are not well adapted into that level of ketosis. Yeah, I would not measure. I would say if you feel when you feel the hunger is mildly bothering you, but it's mitigatable by, say, you climb up the stairs 1 or 2 times, you use that ketone to heighten your locomotion drive, and then it does have an anxiolytic effect. I would say that'll be metabolically appropriate and also just life compatible. You don't want, I would imagine you probably don't want to be jittery all the time. Yeah.
Exactly. Mary asks,
Mm-hmm.
based on what you stated about hunger drive regulation, how does one determine the best individualized fat protein ratio for optimized health?
Yeah. I think for me, so we know in terms of protein deficiency would cause a mammal to overconsume total calorie, meaning that in a protein deficit, we do have foraging behavior. We would eat more, try to get enough protein in. So protein deficiency, extremely low protein deficit will cause overconsumptory drive. And then so why people on high fat carnivore do not seem to have a good hunger control, because consuming a lot of fat is aversive. So that's what's pulling them back, not to overconsume. I think the exact ratio matters less particularly in my research, but the quality of fat you derive from the specific type of fat you are eating matters more. You want say for example, Dr. Kiltz was showing us the steak he was eating. I think it's a good dietary choice because it has abundant protein. The fat quality, especially if it's a good beef, I would say omega-3 would be relatively abundant, and that fat you derive from the ratio you're eating actually has a potent effect on regulating hunger drive, as opposed to just looking at the fat to protein ratio. Yeah.
I've always said that fat comes from animals and oils come from plants, and all oils are industrial. And animal fat is the really only healthy fat you can eat. Plant oils are all masterfully manipulated and marketed as good for you.
Yeah, that's very fair. That's also very, it's almost very tragic, because many of the oils are derived, they develop it industrially, not for calorie purposes. I could understand if they all give us enough calorie because of famine or something. Many of them are developed for food formulation purposes. So we need to make the food shelf stable, into a palatable texture, into a profitable shelf life. That's how they're derived they're developed in the first place, and they just gradually sip into many foods that we consume.
Thankful Pam asks, what is the best 3-to-6 ratio and the best way to get that?
Yeah, so if I look at the fasting ratio I'm just looking at the slides that I had. We see in healthy controls the 6-to-3. Again, healthy control doesn't mean the largest, the most kind of well-muscled person. It just in this case are people who never develop anorexia, but also those are college students. So relatively, I would say they're on the healthy spectrum considering the general population, I see the ratio to be 200 to 200 to 1 would be a 6:3 ratio. But think about it, that's actually a high ratio due to the food environment we are in. And then if you take it to the extreme, so extremely low hunger drive, those people would have a 100 to 1 ratio. So I could imagine if you want to rein back, if you are suffering from overconsumptive drive, you try to rein back of it a little bit. You want to be somewhere more closer to 100 to 1, 6:3, rather than 200 to 1, 6:3. As you can see, 6 is much higher in the college students population. I think it's also a sequela of how much just omega-6 is. It's usually derived from industrial oil or, kind of processed non-animal fat derived oil. I'm not going to say it's strictly vegetable, seeds, nuts oil. It's non-animal fat derived oil usually. Pork does have quite a bit of omega-6 pork derived fat. So that's a swine derived fat. That's a little different from ruminant meat derived fat. I myself eat predominantly ruminant meats. Yeah.
Do we have any real good studies where we can say pig derived fats are more harmful than beef derived fats?
We don't. If pork is something that's affordable, that's palatable, your family likes it, I think getting a good quality of it and go for it. I eat nose to tail, and I also have a great reverence for our farmers and ranchers, and I think I also deeply appreciate the more ancient ways that we harvest the animal and we try to make the best out of it. I think it's a respectful way of living. So I eat, pork tails. Sometimes I get it from local farmers. A lot of people don't know how to cook it or don't like it. I buy. It's actually quite gelatinous if you simply bake it. So I'm not averse by it. But I do know pork that are raised conventionally farm raised in a very crowded environment, their fat tend to be whiter, like color wise, and also a bit high in omega-6.
So those animals that are force fed or farm fed rather than nature fed, where they do their natural roaming and eat what is more appropriate. Although those pigs that are roaming in around industrial farming, where there's cornfields and things like that, that might not be quite normal, because industrial, number one, soy, corn, and rice fields are not natural to the ecology of the world. And so they're not natural eating these foods. What do you think the effects of industrial farming? You kind of said it, but I just wanted to, is it what they feed or how they're living or a combination?
Yeah. It's a deficit in the field of veterinary medicine, or kind of there are a lot of institutions that has good agriculture research program. I would love if they could study the fat deposition with different diet and different kind of roaming strategy or rearing strategy. They do study it, but they study it more from the consumer profitability perspective. So what tastes good, not necessarily what would be nutritionally optimum. If you, I would imagine, again, it's because we, even in research, in my field, we still don't know whether we have a taste bud receptor for omega-6 and omega-3. We do know there are G protein coupled receptors that are capable of binding to those omega-6 or omega-3. But again, if I ask you, do you know, without thinking back about the supplements you buy off the shelf from Costco, do you know how omega-6 and omega-3 taste like? You'd be hard-pressed to tell me a yes, right? You know what salt tastes like, what sugar tastes like. You may be able to say, I know what umami tastes like, but not what omega-6 and 3. That's why we can't, I would imagine if they want to develop the optimum taste profile, they can raise just saturated fat, not necessarily polysaturated. Those specific PUFAs, polyunsaturated fat, omega-3 and omega-6 are both polyunsaturated. They don't have an incentive to develop something that has the optimum ratio for that, because they can simply just, we appreciate fat as our brain or our the taste circuit already correlates the general sense of fat with palatability. So you can drive consumer preference just by depositing, rearing an animal with a lot of low quality fat. Yeah, that's.
Is there really such a thing as nature wild raised animals anymore?
Well, I guess I don't think I have enough ecology training and animal science training to say that. I do think our farmers and ranchers are doing their best.
Yeah.
And I would not discourage someone just because they can't afford the most boutique butcher shop meat from a carnivore diet. But I do think it's if you are eating one thing in large quantity, you just like pork, you eat exuberant amount of it, then the cumulative effect become important. If you spread your diet across different types of meats, I think sampling particularly not the greatest quality of any one type would not derail you. But if you're just someone who only eats 3 types of meats every single day, then I would be a bit more choosy in terms of the quality.
I have a question here from Kiltz Mighty Tribe from Maya. Do we have any advice for recovering from amenorrhea and anorexia for a woman of 26 years old, not had a period for 5 years due to a low-fat vegan diet between the ages of 18 to 24?
Yeah, we see that a lot. Amenorrhea, it takes longer to recover compared to your weight restoration. So again, weight restoration does not entirely correlate with menstrual cycle restoration in many people. So some people can still be underweight and they restore their menstrual cycle. Some people are almost overshooting their weight. They become uncomfortable in their body and they still don't have their menstrual cycle back. So I would say don't use weight to judge whether it's the time it should come back. I would say maintain adequate fat intake, not necessarily rapidly gaining weight, but if you are underweight and eating adequate fat, if you're still underweight and eating adequate fat and your menstrual cycle are not coming back, further weight restore may benefit. Yeah, I would say definitely maintain a high-fat diet.
Yeah, I agree. Carnivore, but fatty meat. And I always go to rare to raw because Pottinger's cats cooked didn't do as well as raw, especially when it came to reproduction.
Yeah, and also I would say try not to derive your fat from loads of nuts and seeds. I know I guess the person was eating a vegan diet. Um, j- it'll be uncomfortable for the person because it's so much fiber with it and so much other. Yeah, it's uncomfortable to eat to get enough fat from all the nuts and seeds.
So fats don't come from nuts. This is why I say fats don't come from nuts and seeds. Plant oils do, which are all industrial. And seeds and nuts actually contain poisonous substances because ultimately a plant does not make a seed or a nut in order to be crushed and eaten. It maybe makes them to be eaten whole within the fruit in order to be pooped, planted, and then obviously to prosper.
Yeah, we also have limited ability to further metabolize the omega-6 and the omega-3. They actually, believe it or not, one of the genes, the genes that encodes a protein, metabolize both of them into immune active signaling molecules, and they compete for that same protein. And the gene that encodes that protein has been identified as an anorexia risk factor gene. So as you can imagine, if you eat a ton of 6, you're going to compete out all the 3 because as I was telling you, if you sample college students, they have a much higher 6-to-3 ratio. It's, I think, partially, maybe, I think part of the reason was the food environment we're in. And if both of them are competing for the same enzyme, then you're going to crowd out that enzyme. Yeah. For you to eat seeds comes as a combination of 6 and 3, and most of them are 6 dominant, I would say. For example, for rodents, the type of seeds we use to formulate an omega-6 low, omega-3 high diet is actually safflower seeds. That's such a rare thing, how can we humans, like, we don't go to buy safflower seeds, right?
If you look at the United States Department of Agriculture's journal on plant poisoning, all animals that graze all around the world, I don't care if it's natural grasslands, they are infestated with invasive species of plants that are harmful to the animals, and the animals have been shipped around the world in unnatural environments for where they initially evolved out. And so when you understand that, and there was a comment we were talking about, there's a comment. Let me hit this real quick, Alia, is that it's cheap to raise animals on rangeland, no doubt about it. But those rangelands are not natural. Number one is the pollutants of the world travel everywhere. The plants, the microbes, and other animals are also been shipped around the world. And when we talk about our sure natural grasslands, they don't really exist anywhere. And so, but USDA Journal of Agriculture, it looks at the diseases, including reproductive dysfunction, anorexia, and psychosis in animals from the plants that are in their natural ranges.
That's tragic to know. Yeah, I wasn't familiar with that body of literature.
Well, but that's normal because plants around the world do not want to be eaten. And they have masterfully manipulated their genetic population in order to minimize the herbivorous populations or control them. We think humans are smarter than plants, but plants actually are far more intelligent than we are.
Yeah, I know in our rural America we have people who grow who grow industrial crops for a living, I think it, I don't want to diss them to say they're doing anything harmful. They need to make a living as well. I think there's usage of massively produced corn, massively produced peanuts. They have a role in like just as a commodity in our society. Yeah, it's challenging to maintain ecologically not ecologically more kind of balanced grazing way or rearing of animals. I actually personally know many farmers and ranchers who are fighting hard for it, and their life is absolutely it's a difficult life. I have a lot of reverence for them to maintain their family's farm, family's ranch. Yeah.
You go ahead, Alia. There was a couple other questions and comments.
Great. Let's see. CS says, I didn't hear the answer for the question. What is the ideal blood ketone level and blood glucose level?
I guess they want a specific range.
Yeah.
Oh, I wouldn't be able to tell. And I think I would stand by that answer just because, for example, what ratio would cause someone to be uncontrollably anxious? I think that are different in different people because, for example, what ketone level would be adequate for your body to be signaling say, for example, if you want to utilize a slightly higher ketone level to boost your exercise activity performance, it'll definitely differ in different people. And if we sample animal in ketosis, they're in natural ketosis and they're losing weight, their range will be entirely kind of vary a lot. Someone can have a low ketone, a mouse can have a low ketone level and still be losing weight. Someone could have a high ketone level and not losing weight. And I would, it's just, I wouldn't be responsible for giving a specific level. I would say if your goal is to lose weight, first I would say go get into a ketosis from slight energy deficit perspective, not in an energy replete or surplus way, and then just see your purpose. Track your weight loss if you want to lose weight. Yeah.
Fasting.
Yeah, diabetic people would need to take precaution because the fasting for them is a bit tricky. Yeah.
Type 2 or 1?
You mean 2-to-1 ratio?
No. Fasting. I mean, I imagine that fasting for diabetics is actually magical.
It is. They just have to be carefully monitored, especially
depending on the medications they're taking, probably.
Yeah, so the glucose lowering medications, which actually are just drugs developed because of a deadly diet.
Yeah, that's right. Some of the some of the diabetes medication are hypoglycemic, like they tank your blood sugar. Others do not directly tank your blood sugar. So that's right. Yeah.
Take this question, please. Alia.
Sure. If we cook with clean bacon fat, should we have concern about our omega-6 or to test to confirm the impact, if any?
I would not, if the bacon is of the decent quality, I would not be too concerned about it, because pork lard is still quite a natural diet, and our grandma's generation, grew up eating it. So if you test it, it'll have a higher 6-to-3 ratio for sure compared to beef fat or sweet, but it's not to the level I would test because I'm concerned about it. It's still much better compared to a kind of plant-derived fat, I would imagine. you're now trying to eat an omega-6 deficient diet. Let me put it this way. Omega-6 has its role, and we need some from pork.
It's in beef also. So it's in all. I mean, eat the beef. It's the very best. Pork is great. Lamb, goat, alligator, I guess. Although I don't know, where's the fattiest parts of the alligator? Is it retroperitoneal, perinephric?
Yeah, that I mean the fat on top of the kidney, we evolutionarily evolved to have them, right? Yeah.
Those love handles.
Well, retroperitoneal would actually be it'll be visceral, part of the visceral.
Right. We are built for love handles. We are built for getting fat, because getting fat is actually evolutionarily the best thing for migrators.
And for reproduction.
Exactly. You know,
anorexia is deadly, and anorexia is likely all secondary to a plant-based diet, and that's it.
I would say anorexia, it's a prolonged severe energy deficit. You can get into that energy deficit state in many ways. For example, a correlate of that very similar illness is what we call Rett syndrome in athletes. So they're eating adequate calorie. They're outputting so much more. Yeah, you can just, you eat adequately, but you're burning your calorie all the time. That can also get you into this anorexia physiology where you can self-regulate out.
What animal spends most of their day running?
I do not know.
None. It's also pathologic.
Yeah, exactly. That's why I think, kind of pursuing fasting or pursuing ketosis to the point where you're anxious, you need exercise for its anxiolytic purposes nonstop would actually not be great at all. Yeah. It's not a sustainable way of, because you will get yourself into this prolonged severe energy deficit, and that nutritional rehabilitation process would be very painful and not healthy for your bone, not healthy for your hormonal health at all. Yeah. So that's why I would say, if you are pursuing ketosis for the purpose of losing weight, I would not even track the absolute ketone level. Get it into it by fasting, by eating a good combination of fat and protein, and just to see whether you are actively losing weight or not. Yeah, it's great. It's great, Dr. Kiltz. I'm glad, you're in this space. You care for females who come to you with their reproductive challenges. Yeah, I hope our male patients they shouldn't be, ashamed of, my sex drive is abnormal, my lift in the gym sucks. They should be, I hope more providers would be say, hey, this is something you can come to doctors to talk about.
Well, I want to honor you for being in this space and going out there and working in the standard medical scientific world, because we need more people like you that are doing the studies and beginning to talk about it, and because this is real science. And again, nature still is the major manufacturer here. It obviously, thankfully, to our ranchers and our farmers, even eating some plants, by the way, I'm not against eating some plants. I think that this should be the center of your plate, the fatty meat, and fat is the most important thing to eat. There's a lack of fat is partly our killer and leader to disease. Even many carnivores, protein poisoning, rabbit starvation, and the fermenters love it because fat suppresses the microbes in the gut, and they don't want to be suppressed.
Right.
Yeah, I just want to, let our audience know, even in the very academic setting, we have many, there are kind of open-minded scientists and physicians who are willing to work collaboratively with our patient to at least try a diet that they think might help them. And our audience really humbles us to see their struggles, what they've tried. We listen to them too.
All right, who's the winner today?
Who is the winner? Let's see. For Kiltz's Keto Carnivore book. Dr. Kiltz, of course. I can just do it again.
Oh my God.
Yeah,
Wait a minute. I think Maya swung right on KMT.
All right, email me, Alia at drkiltz.com with your
in the
address.
KMT tribe, it's Maya, MAYASWAN, right, WRIGHT.
Great. Congrats.
And we'll reach out to Maya. And is there a course later today, Dr. Nelson?
Yes, at 3 p.m. We're
3
having the
What are we
class
talking
today.
about?
Mindset. We have a special guest talking about mindset. Dr. Kiltz.
Wait, is anyone doing science on spirituality?
I would say kind of meditation, kind of how does, most of them are still, I know at Yale there are people who study how music affect mood. How can you use music therapeutically? There's also study about prayer. Prayer is actually a way of a meditation. How does that affect? I have not seen like a true neural recording from it, but music in the setting of neural recording has definitely been done. And definitely prayer in humans are more kind of subjective behavioral report. Yeah.
I mean, if you think about it, our evolution is all about religions and spirituality and community, which it's something so powerful. Our tribe, that's why Kiltz Mighty Tribe, is because we're tribal in our nature.
Yeah, it's also, I would say prior, it's almost a healthy coping strategy. If you think about it, that's a way we defend against being overwhelmed, right? You think this thing is absolutely out of my control. You kind of compartmentalize it to a higher power so you don't feel like overwhelmed by it. Yeah, and also you distribute it towards others who you perceive as share the religion and being able to share the burden with you. Like, for example, shutting down, or the shutting down response in animals, you definitely see it. What we call the give up response, or the other thing is dissociating in humans, are all essentially the nervous system become overwhelmed.
And so we go to a mass where a congregation and chanting and music and collective mindsets come together and sharing love.
Yeah.
And love of the mindset, of the connections. And that's so important for all, because we're herd animals. We're not meant to be out in isolation.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Yeah. A lot of times I go to my work, I go to my inpatient unit. So I have my crucifix and I have a Sacred Heart. Not because I want to push religion onto anyone. I just wish all my patients who are deeply suffering would have a good day. Yeah, because as of now, I take care of chronically very psychotic patients. They are not, essentially in their lifetime, they're not entirely free of psychosis. It's a very challenging life.
Are they fed lots of ribeye steak and burgers and eggs?
No,
what if we did that? What if we said, you know what, let's do a Harvard meetup, and we invited everyone to this, because it's either overcooked chicken, turkey, there's no fat. It's got gravy, and gravy. What do people add to create gravy? flour, and sugar.
Yeah, it does break my heart to see what patients are eating in the hospital. We're doing the best. I must say it's difficult to run a hospital kitchen, and then there must be a balance in terms of cost versus, I hope we can have more kind of other care models that are developed together with this hospital-based disease treating model that we have right now. It's a good thing we have a hospital. You go into like acute infection, sepsis, cancer, needing surgery. Like modern medicine does wonders for us. But say, for example, in Scandinavian countries, when they care for people with cognitive impairment, like Alzheimer's, they actually have almost a place where it's set up almost a Disney World of the real world. It has neighborhood, has shops, and then those Alzheimer patients go into the shops and they give them fake money. So they still have to use their intellect to, okay, can I still calculate a tip to pretend to pay when they go to a restaurant? Essentially it's like they're not paying anything. The government is paying behind the scenes, but it's just engaging them still to use their brain, not letting them just to, here, like, what do? We send them to nursing home, right? They stop using their intellect altogether.
But if we stop feeding them poisons, they heal on their own naturally. And so I think the hospitals and the elderly mental, or I should say memory care places, if we instill a carnivore idea concept for our brothers and sisters, suddenly the marijuana, the heroin, the cocaine, and the toxins in the plants will wither away and their minds will open up and the fog will go away. So I think we are in the natural standard world, but partly we're rebels. And we need to be the revelers, to say, hey, listen, this dude, Jesus Christ, is the master of carnivore. And, the light is within each and every one of us, but we're poisoned by plants. A little bit of wine from time to time, but heroin, cocaine, marijuana, and alcohol are deadly for humans. And we can inspire each and every one of our brothers and sisters. The anorexia is all secondary to the marketing of a plant-based diet and the propaganda of the profiteers. Now, again, no disrespect to all of us that are part of this story, but let's say enough.
Yeah, I do also do have, I think the liberalization of cannabis use do put certain susceptible population at risk, especially someone who have a genetic predisposition, a family history of severe mental illness.
Which is kind of called the human race.
They should be very cautious about, first-time psychotic break, especially in young people. It's heartbreaking to see. It wrecks their life unproductive.
Although it's all part of the journey, suffering strengthens, and our job here is to have faith and push on and share a story that some dude named JC never stopped telling the story, even though he was crucified. And so I think he's our inspiration.
Yeah.
Doctor, do you have a social media presence if anyone wants to engage with you in any way?
I have a personal Instagram account. I don't post much. It's mainly about, I don't like, because I'm not earning an income from social media.
We aren't either.
Yeah, exactly. So I don't do information that our audience wouldn't be able to derive any information. I think they can email me if they want to. I'm happy to share with Ali my Instagram later if they want to follow. I'm an open book. What they see is my life. Yeah.
And well over the 7 o'clock mark, but have you read the books by Dr. Christopher Palmer and Dr. Georgia Eads, the Harvard psychiatrist?
Yeah, so I read their published studies, but not the book that written to the
Okay.
general audience. Yeah. Yeah, and Dr. Kiltz, just because we were talking about kind of the religious connotation, my Instagram handle is actually a Bible verse. It's "Let the land lay fallow," meaning let the land rest. I think the restfulness is something that's lacking in our current very busy society. So the idea of every few years you let the land lay fallow is such it's a humble attitude towards life.
I agree.
Yeah, I'll share with Ali, and then they can also email
Sure.
me.
Sure.
Do a carnivore conversations on this. That would be really great.
Sure. I can set that up.
Thank
All
you.
right. Thanks, everybody. See you tomorrow with Lee Kopis in the morning. Goodbye.
Bye bye.